Hello everyone and welcome back to the God Wars 2. Last time I told you a tale about the God Wars 2. This time I'll tell you a tale that's not actually a tale. I have no clue what I'm saying right now. So, this is a guide to the God Wars Dungeon 2's bosses and exactly how everything works. First thing we're going to look at real quick is just the tools and the anima crystal that were left over from the encampment event, if you still have any of them around, and the Tales of the God Wars. So, if you have any tools remaining that you have not used up yet, you are actually able to trade them in at Ajat, who's up on top of the Heart of Gielinor, and he will trade them in for 10 experience per regular tool. I didn't have any golden tools to check how much they give, but I'm certain that they would give a little bit more than the regular tools. Either way, you can put it into any skill that was used during the event. And when it comes to the anima crystal, you can actually go ahead and give that to one of the 4 representatives that are down inside the dungeon. So, I personally would recommend giving it to Zamorak. It actually has no lore value whatsoever, so don't worry about that. I chose Seren based on lore, because I felt that that was the best goddess to give it to, but in the end it didn't really matter. It's actually just a gameplay purpose. It has nothing to do with lore. When you hand that anima crystal in, it will give you 500 reputation with the chosen faction. And what happens is, there are rewards based on the amount of reputation that you have with X god or goddess. Before we go ahead and get into the guide, I'm just going to give you a heads up and say that there will be timestamps on screen right now, and they will be down in the description for certain areas of the guide. Whichever boss you want to do, or perhaps you just want to know about the event rewards, or perhaps how Killcount works, there will be buttons for all of that. You can just go ahead and push them. It'll put you directly into the part of the video where I explain that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is Killcount, and how Killcount works with the instances. Killcount is different from the first time that it actually happened in God Wars Dungeon 1. What it is now is that when you go into the dungeon, you'll have to go to the area where you want to find creatures for the boss that you want to fight. So there's the 4 faction areas, and you'll be able to find creatures generally spawning right beside the boss room, because they spawn in, they run down the hallway, and then they go in and start fighting each other. As of right now, there are a lot of players inside the dungeon, so most of the time the NPCs don't even get a chance to fight each other. That portal is where they spawn. It usually spawns 8 or so NPCs, and they all go running down the hallway to the middle where they can all fight. If you were to camp there at that portal, you're able to get 40 kill count really quickly. They also added in a new function alongside the kill count, where the more creatures you kill in a small allotted time span will give you more and more kill count. So every creature you kill will give you 10% to your kill count multiplier, let's call it that. If you're able to kill 10 creatures within that allotted time, you'll get a 200% kill count bonus. And everything that you kill after you get that 200% bonus will give you 2 times the kill count, including the big automatons, or whatever they are that spawn for the chosen factions. I'll go more into that later. This multiplier can be increased as high as you can go until the allotted time has run out, and it will reset back down to 100%. As of right now, it's actually really difficult to get it up so high, so expect to go in killing about 40 things before you can get into your boss room. The kill count in this God Wars dungeon does not actually run out at any point, so you can go in purposely with the idea that you're going to go in and collect kill count, leave, bank, get all your gear that you want to use, and then come right back. The NPCs in the God Wars Dungeon 2, aside from bosses, don't actually drop any loot except for ingression fragments. What these fragments are actually used to collect reputation for given factions. At numbers 100 ingression fragments and 250 fragments, you will be able to summon in NPCs of larger size to assist with the given faction that you choose of. Once you reach a certain amount, what you can do is go ahead and click on it. You'll be able to choose a faction, one of the 4 that are available, you will be able to then choose, after you've chosen your faction, what size of a creature you want to summon. You can summon both a small one for 100 fragments that gives 5 reputation, or you can summon in a large one for 250 fragments that gives 15 reputation. It will then summon in either a 20,000 health creature for your given faction. It will go around and start attacking things, or it will summon in a 100,000 health creature that will start attacking things of the other factions. In the center of the dungeon, you will find a bounty hunter. This bounty hunter will actually give you a choice of a faction that you wish. You can choose one of the 4 factions, and then he can assign you one of the other 3 factions available as a bounty target. This is almost like a Slayer task where he tells you to kill 100 of the given faction. What you can do is either you can go out into the dungeon and kill 100 of X faction that you're assigned, or you can go into the boss room for that faction and get 2 kills per boss that you kill. So you would only have to kill 50 bosses or kill 100 minions. As a reward for completing the bounty targets, you will be given 150 faction points for whatever faction you chose when you spoke to him. And you will also be given the option to do another bounty target. You can have up to 5 per quota, which I am unsure exactly, since this is just, I'm recording this on the day that the God Wars Dungeon 2 came out. So I am unsure of when the quota is reset. It might be weekly, I'm going to assume. As for the instances in the God Wars Dungeon 2, they function slightly different from how the other instances work in the game. So what happens with this one is, instead of having to pay money to get into your instance, the entire God Wars Dungeon 2 is an instance every time you want to go into one of the boss rooms. There is no public room, similar to how the Queen Black Dragon works. You go up to the boss room, and if you have 40 kill count, you're able to set up a room, and everybody else who is with you also has to have 40 kill count. It's not a one-time payment. Once you enter that room, you have activated a 60-minute timer. It'll take your 40 kill count away, and for the next 1 full hour, no matter what you do, your timer will start ticking down. Even if you leave the room, it will continue ticking down, so keep that in mind. So, kill count persists, however, the time that you start your instance from the time that you leave will continue ticking until the full hour is up. Now on to the bosses. Depending on what boss you want to do in the God Wars Dungeon 2, you're gonna have to have a specific level in certain stats. For Zamorak, it is level 80 ranged. For Seren, it is level 80 magic. Gregory, which is Sliske, has a requirement of level 80 prayer. And the Zarosian boss has a requirement of level 80 attack. Along with the required stat, I advise that you have at least extreme potions and a beast of burden of some type. Personally, I would say that you should at least have a yak, but of course you can do it with something else. Your trips will just be a lot shorter. Higher prayer will also help, along with higher herblore, so that you can actually have overloads, as they help immensely, because then you will be able to use Saradomin brews without taking any of the negative effects. Every boss in the God Wars Dungeon 2 has 200,000 health, so be prepared for quite long fights. Let's go ahead first and take a look at the Zamorakian boss. For the Zamorakian God Wars Dungeon boss, I advise that you would bring melee or ranged. Magic won't really work here very well. The reason why I say this is because the 2 bosses use melee and ranged attacks. While you could pray ranged and tank the melee, I find it better to pray melee with melee armor on and to just tank the ranged attacks. For the mechanics of the Fury fight, as soon as they spawn, go ahead and attack them, and when you see the blue one has jumped off to the side, keep an eye on her, because What you have to do is she will do a dashing attack, and you just have to step off to the side. She will do that dash attack 4 times, doing north, south, east, west. She'll do both 2 times before stopping. Once she's finished, watch out for the red one, because she will go to one of 16 spaces in the boss room, and she will jump up in the air and start shooting ranged attacks at every other section of the boss room. What you do to avoid that is you stand directly below her. She won't do any damage to you, and you can go ahead and attack the blue one all you want until she's done. Heads up, you will take a lot of lag when she starts doing that ranged attack. For some reason, even with very low settings, it still hit my FPS ridiculously hard, and I don't know why that is. Perhaps it's just the immense amount of particles flying everywhere. After that, they'll both eventually go into the middle of the room and light the outside edges of the room on fire. Go into the middle with them, and they will start doing styleless attacks towards your direction. If you have Soul Split, you can go ahead and switch to that instead of using up Prayer, and heal yourself up a bit since there is nothing you can protect against. Over their heads will appear 2 bars. When those bars are almost finished and they're about to complete it, the fire will disappear and they will do a huge explosion in the middle of the room. What you want to do to avoid that is right when the bar is about to finish, run into the fire. The fire will dissipate and they will create a huge explosion. If you're caught in that explosion, it will deal upwards of 5,000 damage to you. Even if you fail and you're into the fire a little bit too early, the fire will do a minuscule amount of damage in comparison to the huge amount that they do from that explosion, so it's okay to even go a little bit early. From this point on, the boss fight will actually repeat itself. The blue will start dashing again, the red will do the rain, and then they'll be back to the fire, and will continue that way until the boss is defeated. For the Dragonrider boss, what you're going to want to do is use ranged attacks. I've tried out magic and melee and they didn't work very well in comparison to ranged. So what you're going to want to do is when you head in, you're going to want to pray melee at the start of the fight. This boss in fact has 2 phases. The first one where it's just the Dragonrider, Vindicta, and her pet dragon who flies above and breathes a line of fire. How it's going to work in the beginning is Vindicta will have a 2 square around her radius AoE attack that she will use often. Every once in a while you're fighting Vindicta, the dragon will fly over and breathe purple fire all over the place in a straight line. This line will always fly directly above where you are. When the fire comes down, just walk out of it and ignore it, because as long as you're not in it, you will not be taking any damage. The damage it does cause will be a magic style, so you won't be praying against it. Once Vindicta goes from 200,000 to 100,000 health, so at 50%, she will actually go into the second phase. What this is the dragon flies down and she jumps onto the dragon's back. She also then gains a second style of attack, which is ranged and melee. What you're going to want to do then, as soon as the phase 2 starts, you're going to want to switch your prey melee to prey ranged. The ranged attack does much more damage. It's essentially the same fight, but the AoE ability is now gone, and every once in a while, the dragon will fly up in the air, disappear, and land in one of the 4 corners of the room. It will then shoot a line of purple fire in your direction. Basically, when you see the dragons flying up to go into one of the corners, just run diagonally so that it will avoid the fire from hitting you. Continue this until the dragon has died and you will beat the boss. This boss has very few mechanics and is extremely easy, but it does a lot of damage because of the fact that there are 2 styles and that prayer can only do so much. So Gregorovic. This guy. He is an interesting one. And also his music is pretty fabulous, although it doesn't really fit the RuneScape theme. Just listen to this. Yeah, it's a little bit silly for RuneScape, but it is great nonetheless. So what you're going to want to do for Grigorovic. This guy has quite a few mechanics you have to watch out for, and he can hurt a lot if you're not paying attention. I advise using melee combat style to fight this guy, and what you're going to want to do is pray ranged for the entire fight. He does have a melee attack, however it is not nearly as threatening as his range attacks, especially when the adds come in. This boss will summon in 2 types of adds. He will summon in 3 shadows at a time, and he will also summon in a red ghost. There are 3 pillars throughout this room, and when he summons a red ghost, they can come from one of the 3 pillars. He will shout, "Rise, child," or "Rise, children," something along those lines, and will either summon one of the 3 masks. The 3 masks are Rage, Mania, and Delirium. Each 3 of these red ghosts will do a special effect on the boss if they are able to reach him. So when he spawns in the red ghost, it will make a beeline for the boss. And what you have to do is go ahead and aggro it or kill it before it reaches Greg. We're just gonna call him Greg. Before it reaches Greg. They only have 3,000 life points, so it's very easy to kill them. The effects that will happen if they do reach Gregoria are as follows. The Mask of Rage will give Gregorina much higher damage on his attacks. The Mask of Mania will give Grog his special abilities more frequently, and he will be able to attack faster. The Mask of Delirium will give Gregorino much more powerful poison. So those 3 masks you have to watch out very closely for and kill the ghosts before they get there. His other mechanic that you have to watch out for is the shades. Every once in a while he'll spawn in 3 shades, and what will happen is that those shades will have 3,000 health. Greg will have the ability to teleport to any of those shades and swap places with them. So, if you have any red ghosts up, make sure to kill them really quickly, because if he teleports to one of the shades nearby, it can easily take a shortcut straight to him. Greg has another mechanic where he will throw his knives up into the air after summoning shades, and they will come crashing down and make black dots all over the ground. If you are standing in these black dots, when the knives come back down, you'll get hit for a lot of magic damage, enough that it can actually KO you. So keep an eye out for that while you're fighting this guy. Alright, Helwyn. So this guy is certainly not the easiest by any stretch of the imagination, and I personally believe he may be the hardest one. The only reason that you could give that to, though, is probably because magic is my weakest style. I don't have a lot of good gear for it. So how you're going to want to actually fight Helwyn is to have magic, and he requires 80 magic in the first place to even get into his zone, so that is kind of a gating system for him. Bring your best armor and your weapon, because you're going to need it. This guy has a lot of damage that he likes to throw out. What you're going to do for Helwyn is you're going to use Prey Melee, and you're going to have to watch out for all of his mechanics. He has a lot of them. I like to dub this guy the Freedom Bear. Now, there's a real good reason for that. He has his main attacks basically being bleed. Everything he does is just going to tick you down really quickly. And you can actually dump all of his bleed effects off of you by using the Freedom ability. His mechanics are as follows. He will go up on his hind legs and say, "You will bleed," and he will come down on you and hit you for around 1,500 and initiate a bleed on you for about 50 per tick. He then has a second ability, which is an AoE, where he'll sometimes charge and sometimes he won't charge, he'll just do it, where he will start spinning around in a circle and hitting everything around him, doing approximately 800 melee damage every time that he hits. On top of that, though, is he will also initiate bleeds if you don't have them, and if you do have a bleed on you already, he will make it worse, oftentimes going up to around 250 if you get hit by this. This is why it's so important to have the Freedom ability, because if you don't, you're going to be ticking for 250 per tick and it will just destroy you. You can avoid those attacks, however, by surging through him to the other side and get really far away before he has the ability to do that. The downside to that is that you are unable to use Revolution if you want to do that tactic. Reason being is because Revolution takes way too long for the abilities to cool down before he's able to get the ability off, because you need to be on your toes when it happens. You don't really have much of a reaction time. You can avoid it by going to the side, but it's very difficult because he has such a wide area that he's in, so he's able to hit from very far away, making it extremely difficult to dodge this ability without using Surge, or the ranged equivalent that goes backwards. This boss also has two other mechanics that are separate from his actual attacks. The first being mushrooms. Every once in a while he will summon big mushrooms, and they will have a giant green circle around them. If you go near this circle, you will start ticking for around 200 damage per tick. You will also not have the ability to run. So if you do get inside this mushroom, get out as quick as possible and stay out of them. Avoid them like the goddamn plague. He will also, on top of that, summon in a whole bunch of wolves that will come and attack you. They only use melee, so you're already praying against them, and they're not exactly the biggest threats. If you have AoE attacks, they will kill them fairly easily, so you don't have to worry too much about them. This boss is fairly straightforward, but it can really hurt when you don't know what you're doing, so be prepared to take quite a few hits on your first time there. You'll get the hang of it eventually if you keep trying, however, and you really have to be ready to do your abilities on time. Oh! Dormant Anima Crown. Can you sell it, or is it non-tradable?
30 mil!
What? All bosses in the Godwars dungeon area will drop insignias on the ground when you kill them. Doesn't matter if you actually got the loot or not. As long as you participate in the kill, you will get one of these insignias. These insignias can be traded in at any of the 4 faction representatives for reputation. You can also, if you have one of the insignias unlocked, there's an option on it to actually toggle it so that instead of having to pick up all of those little tokens, you can have it so that it automatically trades them into the faction that you have that token for. Oh, the loot. Alright, now, the loot for this Godwars Dungeon 2 is it's alright. So, all the bosses have new items with them, and what they can drop is every single boss can drop dormant anima outfit pieces. And what this outfit piece is it's actually a piece of the hybrid / other types of armor that you can get from the Godwars dungeon. How you activate these armor pieces is you have to find a crest of X piece of armor. Each god has a crest that they will drop, and when you find that piece, you can attach X piece of armor that's unusable, the dormant anima, with 1 crest in order to create 1 piece of armor. So you need a total of 3 crests to get the 3 pieces of gear. The ranged armor is from Zamorak. Gregoria has the hybrid armor. Magic armor comes from the Elven area, and Zarosian is melee. It doesn't matter where you get the dormant pieces, as long as the crest is from the god that you want, it will give you that piece of armor. In fact, we were lucky enough to get a crest and a helmet, so I'm able to actually connect the two and show you the Zamorakian ranged helmet. When you attach a crest to a piece of armor, you will get a level 80 piece of gear. This piece of gear will be equal to Pernix, Torva, or Virtus. The only difference between those armors and the next armors is that the next armors have health points and prayer bonus, whereas the pieces from Godwars Dungeon 2 do not. What you can do, however, is in the Godwars Dungeon 2 you will be able to get essences, and with those essences you are able to actually upgrade the hybrid armor, and it will become level 85 and it will be even better than Torva, Pernix, Virtus. And of course, Gregorian's versions of all those armors are the next War Priest, which will actually have a special effect that you can add on to it if you have a full set of War Priest in the bank. Alongside all of that, there are of course boss pets for every single boss. And every single boss has a specific item that they will drop. Gregorian, he will drop a pair of ranged glaives. What these are literally just thrown weapons, but they never run out. They're one item, and they're work in the same way as any ranged weapon, but more in the way of a melee weapons, where they never use any ammo or anything. Freedom Bearer, he will drop a wand. Zaros will drop a two-handed lance, and the twins, the Furies, they will drop two melee weapons that are dual wield. What these items are, every single one of them is level 85 requirement. They have level 90 accuracy, however they have the damage of a level 80 weapon, so it's like a chaotic but even more accurate. So really, if you can get your hands on them, they are just a straight upgrade from chaotics. The faction system will give you rewards depending on how much reputation you have. 100 reputation will give you 25% drop increase. Whatever that means, I don't know if it means 25% more loot or if it means 25% higher drop rates. 500 reputation will give you the ability to summon champions with the Ingration fragments. 750 reputation will give you a pocket slide item, which is the insignia which I had on Saren. This will be given to you almost instantly because when you use the anima crystal on one of the followers, it will give you the insignia. At 1000 reputation, you will gain 50% drop increase. 1250, you will be able to craft yourself the upgraded versions of the armor, level 85 status when you use the essences. At 1500 reputation, you will unlock the ability to have a new invention material. There's a new invention material for every single boss in the dungeon. At 1750, you will get a faction-specific toy, which is just a cosmetic little item that you can play with. 2000 will give you 75% drop increase. 2500 will give you cosmetic override depending on which faction it is. It will be something different. For example, Saren's is a pair of claws. 3000 reputation will give you 50% kill count reduction, so it will only cost 20 kills per hour. At 5000 reputation, you will get 100% drop increase, along with a title. But the title requires you to have maximum reputation with all factions, and that title is the Verinated. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it helped, and that you were able to get plenty of kills and lots of loot. Allow Greg. Fucking hell, man.